Matthews.
Here.
Jimmy Davis.
Here.
Dave Manella.
Here.
Kirk Drum.
Here.
Ron Randolph.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, we have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Announcements, if you have cell phone or pager, please put them on vibrate or turn them off. If you disagree with the decision by this commission, there are appeal cards over to my right on the railing, and the same with speaker cards. If you wish to speak on any item on this agenda, please fill out a speaker card and turn it into our staff sitting right there, and they'll get it up here to us. Each side on a particular item has 10 minutes to speak with a 5-minute rebuttal. And please don't carry on conversations after your case is heard. Please exit the building. I know we've got some inclement weather moving this way, but we do need you to exit the building, go out onto the covering out there. Mr. Randolph, will you lead us in the invocation? Please rise.
Bow our heads. Gracious Father, once again we come to you, about our heads and lift our heart to say thank you for all the blessings you bestowed in our lives. We thank you for this commission. Lord, we thank you for all the constituents that we serve in the council as well. And gracious Father, let this business be according to the needs of the parish, and all these blessings we ask in your Son Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I want to ask our secretary to lead us in the pledge.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next item is the approval of minutes for the August 6, 2013 meeting. Everyone had a copy forwarded to them in their and separate from their packet. Is there any corrections that need to be made? I'll accept a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Davis to approve. Do I have a second? Todd, second. Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Staff, we have any cases that need to be postponed? No, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, ma'am. All right, public hearing appears. Ready to start with the first case here. It's zoning case 13-08-054. Existing zoning is HC2 Highway Commercial District. The proposed zoning is I2 Industrial District. It's 0.42 acres. The petitioner is Miroslav Katura, and I probably butchered that, and I apologize. Owners Katura's Precision Machining, LLC, the parcel located on the north side of Ben Thomas Road, west of US Highway 11, being 37397 Ben Thomas Road, Slide L, Ward 9, District 14. Staff?
The 2025 Future Land Use Plan calls for the site to be developed with commercial uses. There is an existing warehouse on the property. Staff feels the requested zoning change to I-2 is too intense for the area. Prior to the comprehensive rezoning, the property was zoned M1 Industrial. Staff recommends the request to I-2 designation be denied.
Thank you. I take it, Mr. Shane, you wish to speak?
Yes, sir. Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Daugherty and Honorable Commission. Jeff Shane of the Jones Fussell Law Firm in Covington, and I represent Mr. and Mrs. Miro Katera, who are with me this evening to the left, and also their engineer and surveyor, Mr. Sean Burks. Mr. Daugherty, I know that there is at least one person on behalf of a group that would like to speak in favor of this proposition, and I believe there are others here tonight that would like to speak in opposition. My time initially would be 5 plus 2
10
is
minutes.
Total of 10?
10 minutes for and 10 minutes against with 5-minute rebuttals.
Okay. So initially I would have 10 plus the 5 rebuttal?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. If who's keeping time?
Ms. Levy.
Thank you. Yes, if the Madam Secretary could let me know maybe at about 6 minutes, because I want to make sure that the others that are speaking in favor have an opportunity. Again, thank you for your time, and I have passed out to you some deed restrictions and probably did not have enough to go around the table, because what I thought was 15 was only 10 when I counted them tonight. But maybe a few of you can look at those together. This is an interesting case, and I'd like to give you a little history. It is a request to rezone property from HC2 to I2, but it is to allow Mr. Cotero the opportunity to run what is in essence a one-man or one-person machine shop. And I think the history that you need to know about this property is as follows. This is a 3,000 square foot warehouse structure that's located on Ben Thomas Road. It has a history for 30 years as having been operated as essentially a one-person machine shop by a gentleman named John Duplichan. It's called John's Automotive and Machine Shop. In fact, the sign is still in front of the property. Mr. and Mrs. Cotero bought the property last year as Mr. Duplichan was retiring. And apparently in the process, my clients did not realize that Mr. Duplichan had ceased his operation as a machine shop. And in fact, during comprehensive rezoning, this property was rezoned to HC2. What that allowed or caused to happen was a recognition that a machine shop cannot legally operate as a permitted use in HC2, whereas before it had been a permitted use for 30 plus or minus years. As a result of that, my client, I guess, got with staff before I got involved to determine what zone might be needed in order to operate a machine shop. My client has an extensive history in the machine shop business, and his dream and desire was to own his own shop, operate it, and support his wife and 5 children. I-2 is the only zoning classification that has the uses that would allow for the things that you would do in a machine shop. Obviously, HC2 is not adequate, nor is I-1. When I got involved in the case, in fact, it was the day of your zoning commission meeting last month and asked you to table this matter, I soon learned that there were residents in the community that were interested to learn more about why did he want to change the zoning and what was this all about. So we took the opportunity to meet with the North Slidell Homeowners Association, who are represented here this evening by Pastor Kathleen Bacon, and who will speak as it relates to a community meeting that we had on site last Thursday, August the 29th. The thrust of which was to introduce my clients, introduce myself, assure them that his intent was to do the same activity that had been done by John Duplichan for 30 years in the same location, essentially an indoor machine shop, Monday to Friday, 8 to 5, no changes, but with the suggestion that we would offer a deed restriction to limit the activities under the zoning classification to only a machine shop and no other use. Because understandably so, there was a concern that if, in fact, my clients changed their mind or he sold the property to someone else, who's to say that someone wouldn't make other uses that might be detrimental to the neighborhood? So at least the hope was to suggest that it would remain the status quo. I think it's also important for you to know, if you look at the zoning map attached to your staff report, immediately east of this site is property zoned HC-2 as well. But I'd like you to know that there for approximately 25 years is a business called Acme Hydraulic, who are clearly, I think, an I-2 type use, but they, of course, have had continuous operation. They have not lost their grandfathered right. By no means am I criticizing their operation, but they're an I-2 use on an HC2 property. I think it's also interesting for you to know that across the street on the south side of Ben Thomas Road is the entrance and the beginning of the warehousing to Charter Communications, which in my view, having ridden the site last week, is an office warehouse type facility, which at least would be, in my view, an I-1 use and not either the A4 or HC3 use that you see on your zoning map. I make those points not to point fingers at the other users, but to only suggest that you have, all three of these businesses have 25 to 30 years of history with the same type of use, and quite frankly, are all improperly zoned, in my view, as a result of comprehensive zoning. At least the zoning afforded in comprehensive zoning did not match the historical use and does not match the use today. So with those things having been said, we obviously ask you to consider recommending that this property be rezoned to I-2, but only if the petitioner in fact offers the deed restriction presented to you this evening, which limits the uses, makes it clear that it will not create a legal precedent for other zoning cases in the area. We recognize that the deed restriction cannot absolutely guarantee that, but the North Slidell Homeowners Association wanted us to add language to that effect in the deed restriction, which we were glad to do. And we think that this will give the Kateras an opportunity to pursue their labor, pursue their vocation, how they'd like to make a living, but also in a manner that's consistent and compatible with how the neighborhood has been for many years. Thank you for your time.
All right, there was someone else that wished to speak for this? Okay, please come forward and state your name.
All right, thank you.
You've got 4 minutes.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. I'm Pastor Kathleen Javery Bacon, Slidell, Louisiana. I'm located on my family-owned property on the corner of Ben Thomas and Javery Road. Some say Javery, but the bloodline knows it's Javery Road. And so I'm here tonight because as a result of a community meeting that we attempted to have with at least half of the residents on this past, it was Wednesday the 28th, Attorney Shane, that was Wednesday the 28th, and we did not really have enough to make the quorum we needed to vote, but I've had people come to the house, and people were there that night after Mr. Shane introduced what the deed restriction was about, and also eminent domain, and he gave us a very clear vision of it. We felt that the deed restriction would be the way to go and allow Mr. Miro to open his shop. We've been in that community for a long time. As a matter of fact, my father was the very first to buy property on the corner. That's why it's Javery Road, and my grandparents behind it. So we've seen lots of businesses come and go, and I've been in and out because of ministry and business, but I'm back on the Javery property right now. And I came tonight, I understand maybe there's a petition here in regards to it, but I came tonight as a result of the meeting we had with some of our residents to say that I am for the project opening as the shop that he so desperately needs to reopen because of his financial investments, and not because of that, but the asset he'll be to our neighborhood. Because I have all kinds of projects in the neighborhood with children and with the elderly through the ministry. And I could say for the most part, the business owners there have been a blessing. They have donated of their goods, of their finances. They have attended. We have a great working partnership. So I don't personally, even though we did not get to vote that night because we didn't have a quorum, based on the ones that have come to see me that didn't have a problem and couldn't be here tonight, I don't see any reason why we could not allow Mr. Miro to go forth with his project with the deed restriction, with the understanding that the deed restriction is what is allowing him to come in, and we won't be doing any more deed restrictions because the land that's to the right, the left of the building, when you're looking at it, is nothing but woods. And then if you look across the street, it's a car lot, a parking area that the gentleman with the hydraulic system and caterpillars and all that, been there for years, he owns, and next to him is nothing but woods. But a part of that is agricultural, A4, residential, then the rest would be highway commercial 2, and then there's Charter's old building when they first started. But I don't see him, I don't see it posing a threat. After meeting with the mayor this morning and Councilman Hicks and others, we have a bigger issue with the sewer project. So compared to the sewer project, this is just nothing we can't handle. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Ms. Bacon.
You're welcome.
All right, that's, the time's been allotted on the floor. I understand there's some people that wish to speak against this as well. If you have a single person that wishes to represent the group, please come forward. Again, you will have 10 minutes to speak and then 5-minute rebuttal after, we go back and forth. Does anybody wish to speak on this? Okay, Mr. Shane, if you have any rebuttal, since we don't have anybody speaking against.
No rebuttal, other than I think it's, again, the community is well aware of this case, not only because it was set on last month's agenda, but we delayed it so that we'd have opportunity to get word out. And I hope that, certainly Pastor Bacon speaks on behalf of our organization. I realize it wasn't a formal vote, but we wanted to get a feel from the community. Hopefully you've gotten that feel. And if any of you have questions about the deed restriction, and that's really why I came back to the podium, I'll address that during your comments and questions.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Shane. Since there's no one else that wishes to speak on this, I will close the floor to the public and bring it back to the commission. Mr. Matthews.
Mr. Shank, I have one real question of you.
Yes,
Deed
sir.
restrictions seem to be pretty comprehensive, with one possible exception. Does this also exclude the use of any of the administrative permits? It doesn't appear to.
Well, if I remember correctly, the way we set it up is that it, in 2.1A at the bottom of page 2, only those items, 1, 2, and 3, would be permitted uses. And I think B specifically precludes all other uses. We would not have a problem if you wanted us to include administrative in subsection B, but we decided to make it specific and say that the only things that could be done would be the things under section 2.1A, which we believed were the classifications
yes.
that would kind of define a machine shop.
To me, it would just make it absolutely clear that none of the, and these aren't terrible, but I mean snowball stands, food peddlers, things like that,
Well,
we may not want on that.
If you would agree, maybe in section 2.1B, we could say no other permitted and/or administrative uses,
That would do it.
and then I think the rest
That
of
would
it,
do it, yes, that would do it for me.
good suggestion. Thank you, sir.
Helen, I have a question of staff. There's a maximum building size, a minimum lot size, and a minimum lot width. Does this property meet all of those?
The property is .42 acres. You can pull up the I-2.
It's 20,000 square feet, I believe, is the minimum lot size, and
I
quite
think the
frankly,
lot size is 18,295, so it actually does not meet. So I believe we may have to do a waiver on this as
No.
well,
No.
even though the lot size is smaller than the required 20,000.
It's an
Okay.
existing lot of record. He's not trying to create a new lot.
okay. The lot width needs to be at least 80 feet. It is not, I mean, and a maximum building size.
It doesn't exceed the maximum building size.
Well, I don't know, that was just a question, not an accusation, but a question.
It's a 3,000 square foot building, so the size of the building is perfectly fine.
Okay, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Davis, you had your light on. Did you get your question answered? Jimmy? Okay. Ron?
Yes, Mr. Shane.
Yes, sir.
I have, and Ms. Prophetess Bacon so gently did speak that there was a petition. I have in front of me a
Ron?
petition.
Pull your mic down.
I'm sorry. I have in my possession a position of over 40 signatures of residents in the community that signed a petition denying this request. And I was just wondering if we can confirm how many people were there, if there was not enough there to formulate a vote. How can we represent the majority if the majority is going against the approval? Their concern, according to what I'm reading, is the deed restriction does not limit to change of ownership, and it does not guarantee that it would overwhelm the community with a lot of heavy industrial type equipment.
Could I address those comments, sir?
Mhm.
Well, firstly, let me make a few notes. I would suggest, I counted the people that night, and unless Pastor Bacon had a different count, I think we had 21 persons present.
Yes, sir, we have over 100 in that neighborhood.
So we had 21 present that evening. With all due respect to the petition, the gentleman that I believe prepared and walked that petition was not at the meeting. And also, it's been my experience with petitions that it's difficult to know exactly what was presented to those that signed it. Meaning that if you go knock on someone's door and ask them, would you like to see a piece of property zoned industrial down the street, the typical response would be no. I think that if someone said it's Johnny's automotive and machine shop, and a gentleman wants to reopen it and is willing to limit the use to the same thing that was probably going on when many of the people moved into that neighborhood, I'd like to think that people would at least think about it. But to answer the specific, I think, concerns that you said they presented, a change of ownership would not affect this deed restriction. In fact, you will see that in section 3.1 at the top of page 3, and Mr. Savant can comment on this if necessary, but it specifically states that it is an obligation that runs with the land. It binds the land even if it's owned by people in the future. So the idea is that this deed restriction's there whether Mr. and Mrs. Katera own it or not, and so it will go on and on. As to the comment that maybe this use might overwhelm the neighborhood, the only thing I can suggest is I attempted to limit the permitted use to the machine shop, and it apparently has not overwhelmed the neighborhood for 30 or so years. I realize if we didn't have a deed restriction, or if we had listed a lot of uses that could go well beyond a machine shop, I understand why those would be concerned about traffic, or maybe loud noises, dangerous activities, devaluation of property, things of that nature. We intend for this to continue to be a one-man run machine shop in a 3,000 square foot enclosed building. And I might add, it's a handsome building, meaning that don't picture an area that looks, that has building materials or junk or whatever all over the place. Just to the contrary, very neat, well-cut, etc. So I would hope that, with all due respect to those that signed the petition, that we would not be a negative to them or their neighborhood. I would also say that as a result of this meeting tonight, no matter what the vote, as I have indicated before, the Kateras and I would be happy to meet with them in another forum to answer their questions. We don't want them to be uncomfortable. Mr. Katera is going to be a neighbor, granted a business neighbor, but why would you want to start a business if you thought people had misgivings about what you were going to do? Mm-hmm. So those would be my solutions to that petition.
Mr. Doherty, I want to make sure that there's no one in the audience that is against it. Is there anyone out in the audience that's against this?
There's no one from our area.
Okay. What I like to see done, this is just a suggestion, I like to see this tabled for the neighborhood, for the constituents that are for and against, to meet with the petitioner one more time. Because there
we have
seem
sep-
to be some dichotomies here concerning information. And I think it'd be fair to the commission if we give the community another opportunity
Can
to
I-
discuss this.
Can I
We
make a
have,
suggestion?
we have several others here with their lights on that wish to speak. Okay, but before I address that, I'd like to
Sure,
get their
sure.
input on it.
Sure.
Pug?
I think, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead. You point.
Jeff, could I ask a question real quick?
Yes, sir.
This- The first time I had a chance to see the deed restrictions was after we got here. And I've scanned through it real quick, but if I understood what you said earlier, you were saying that this would be, the work would be inside the building? And the reason I say that is this kind of shop sometimes has a tendency to work outside. Okay?
Did I miss? 100% of the work is done inside.
Well, could we, while we tweak in this document, could we just say that?
You okay with that, Miro? Yes, sir.
What, I guess what I'm saying is I've seen some of these fabrication shops, particularly if you get down where they're doing oil well fabrication shops, where they got stuff all over the yard being welded on, and it gets to be really detrimental to the neighborhood. And if you say it's all inside, that answers my question.
Perhaps after A3, which are the 3 permitted uses, I will add something that would say, all such work shall be exclusively conducted indoors.
I can't.
Ms. Casabon?
Move y'all's on there. Okay.
Thank you.
I know we looked at this last month, and I think this has been a great, I know we've discussed, and the position that you're in, I respect that, Ron. I was wondering maybe if before you tabled it, that we looked at this and everybody, that we do have a vote on it, because with them taking this land and tying it up, even for future use in a deed restriction, that's pretty strong. I feel like maybe the people, like you're saying, don't understand what the deed restriction means. And I think it's not changing a use, it's because this has been in place for 30 years, the same type of business. That if we did do a vote on it tonight, that the 10-day that they have, that they can do a bring it before the council is what I'm saying. If anybody objected to it, then the councilman can look at it at his meeting and, before anything's settled. But that would give both sides time to go ahead and explain what's going on and help them understand what's going on. And if, and leave it up to the councilman, but that would give time for both sides, for Mr. Shane, to meet with them again without us tabling it. Because I feel like they've had a great leap of faith by us tabling it last month. And they've put this deed restriction on it, that this is the only thing that they're asking for. That, I think the people would understand that. But I understand that you want to meet, have them meet. So that's just my suggestion, that if we did go with the vote and they have that 10 days, and I'm sure Mr. Shane would meet, with anybody again within that time, and then the councilman would, if it wasn't approved or whatever, that he could make that decision for his people.
Thank you, Ms.
That's my
Casabon.
suggestion.
Mr. Manella?
Jeff, a quick question, just a point of clarification. On the deed restriction, it has that Ms. Kathleen Bacon to consent, yet we had heard that there was not a quorum of the homeowners association.
Yes.
So is she acting on behalf of the homeowners that didn't have a quorum, didn't concur, or is she acting on her own behalf and just happens to have the
Right.
title?
What we would anticipate, when I drafted the deed restriction, I did not know that she would not have a quorum at the meeting I attended. I think obviously she would need to be authorized. This typically would not be signed until the night the ordinance is adopted by the council, because you would make a recommendation, perhaps there's an appeal hearing, but in any event, there would be an introduction, and then ultimately there would be an adoption. And as you may have seen in section 1.4, the deed restriction does not become effective until the ordinance itself is actually adopted. So to answer your question, we would have to make sure that she is authorized before she signs it, and they would have to have a meeting and either establish a quorum, because the quorum is probably much less than the totality of the, I mean, it would be some fraction of the membership that's actually present, and I don't know what their bylaws call for.
Okay, Mr. Davis.
One more thing on the deed restriction, and I appreciate your input on that and adding additional things. But obviously, could you, there is, the I-2 actually allows a 200,000 square foot building. So there's no intention for the building to grow in size. Is that correct? To remain the same at 3,000? Can you put that into the,
You okay not to increase it? Okay.
right, and I just want to make sure though, okay.
We would also add something which will indicate that not only will the work be done indoors, but that the size of the current 3,000 square foot building will not
existing
be
building.
enlarged.
That's fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Okay. Ron, back to Ms. Casaubon's comment. If this were approved by this commission, it could be appealed to the council, and at that point in time, from the time we meet tonight, okay, to the time the council would have it on their agenda, which would probably be October, okay, it would give plenty of time rather than postpone this until next month. Do you understand what I'm saying? Did you have a problem with that?
I really don't have a problem with the timing issue. I just have a problem with somewhat the principle of me having documentation from residents that was emailed to me going against it, and a meeting being held discussing the deed restriction, and those deed restriction instructions were not necessarily privy to those residents. That's my only concern.
Well,
and it was provided, it was presented, and I do understand what you're suggesting. I say let's vote on it, and if it passed, it passed. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
okay, all right, and that way it will keep the train moving, okay? And everyone would be able to come together. I don't know how many people are in the homeowners association, but that's not our problem. That's yours. You said you had 100 residents, but maybe not all of them are members of the association. But it's up to y'all at that point in time to get another meeting scheduled so that you maybe have a quorum there, and so that these 43 people, I believe,
37.
37 people, okay, would attend and be able to discuss this and have any of their questions resolved. Yes, ma'am, you have a comment?
We, yes, sir, in our neighborhood, we have over, I'm always passing flyers. We have somewhere between 90 and, this morning with the mayor, I heard 115 houses and homes in there. We have senior citizens, quite a few, who were not, few of them were there, but it was made public, and I have no problem with us doing it again. But we passed these out to every home, and Mr. Alfred Jones in our community made the flyer for us. And
So each resident,
everybody got a copy of this.
Okay,
A few
Ron,
people go to church on Wednesdays, but everybody in the neighborhood don't attend church. Everyone's not a member of Macedonia. So we, out of that crowd, we had maybe, was it 20-something we had there? Something, and they were very interested. And that's why they laid down everything to be at the meeting, because they knew it was something that we needed to entertain. So,
okay, thank you,
yes.
Ms. Bacon. So I think that also lets you and Mr. Smith know, as well as the community, that there was a publication to all the residents in the area to come to this meeting. And I realize that, you know, some people may have conflict of schedule or something like that. So, Mr. Matthews?
Yeah, there was a question about whether the homeowners association had a meeting and there was a quorum and there was actually authority to sign this deed restriction. While I think that's a good thing to have them sign it, I don't know that that's really necessary for them to sign the deed restriction, accepting the deed restriction. The deed restriction can be placed in their favor by the property owner with or without their approving of it. So I don't think it's really necessary to be concerned whether there was a quorum or not a quorum or whatever. I think what we need to know is that the homeowner is going, or the property owner is going to place this deed restriction, which I think is very restrictive, and we've added a bunch of things. And postponing this another time does them a disservice. There was time to draw a petition, there was time to get signatures. No one appeared tonight against it. To me, it just seems disingenuous for us to again postpone this, and I'd make a motion to approve it with the deed restriction as amended.
Okay, we have a motion. We also have some other folks that wish to speak. Ms. Casabon?
I was just going to say, I understand, as Mr. Shane said, sometimes the petitions are presented. I want these 37 people to understand what the deed, a lot of times they don't understand the deed restriction thing, so that's why I was saying, and I know Mr. Shane would get together with them, and I think once they understand it, it's not going to be anything else but what's been there for 30 years, so.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Matthews to approve with the proviso that the deed restrictions be incorporated into it.
As amended.
Mr. Davis, you seconded. Any further discussion? Please vote. Turn your light off, Mark.
Mr. Matthews, you need to vote. Mr. Davis.
All right, we have 8 yeas, 1 nay. My vote would go with the majority, which would be the yeas, so the motion carries. Now, again, this will go to the council with a recommendation to approve. It'll be in the October council meetings agenda, so there's adequate time for somebody to appeal this in the next 10 days so that if they want to do something different, then there's an opportunity. Okay? Thank you. All right. Item 2, zoning case 13-09-067. Existing zoning is A1A. Proposed zoning is A1A Suburban District and Manufactured Housing Overlay. It's 1.921 acres. Petitioner is Joseph Bonomo and Anna Marscalco Bonomo. The owner is the same. Parcel located on the east side of Louisiana 437 south of Narrow Drive, being Lot 4, Skiro Estates, Ward 3, District 2. Staff?
Staff does not have any objections to the request and would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I am Anna Bonomo. Just came up here to see if you need to ask me any questions.
Okay, do you have any comments other than staff?
No.
Okay, all right. Anyone here in the audience wish to speak against? I'll close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Willie?
I have one question of Mr. Bonomo.
Yes.
Are you familiar with or aware of any restrictions against manufactured housing in Skiro Estates?
Not that I'm aware of,
Okay,
no.
because I'm not aware of any either, but
Okay, no, I'm not aware of any.
we'll move for approval.
I'll second it.
We have a motion to approve, seconded by Ms. Casabon. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Zoning case 13-09-068, A1 Suburban District and PUD, Planned Unit Development Overlay, proposed zoning is A2 Suburban District. It's 8.96 acres. The petitioner is Scott R. Hall. The owner is Marie Abney Harvard. Parcel located on the east side of Abney Road, north of Red Rooster Road, being 62316 Abney Road, Pearl River, Ward 8, District 9. Staff?
The 2025 Future Land Use Plan designates the area to be developed with residential uses. The site is currently surrounded by single-family residences at varying level of density per acre. However, Abney and Red Rooster Road are, for the most part, developed with undeveloped land and single-family residences on sites of 1 acre in size or larger. At this time, staff feels there's no compelling reason to recommend approval of this request, considering that A2 zoning district could potentially create a significant increase in the density in the immediate and surrounding area. Staff recommends denial for the A2 request.
Thank you. Yes, sir. Please state your name and address.
How you doing? I'm Scott Hall. I live at 62316 Abney Road. And I think what was being proposed is kind of like not what we really want for our benefit and for everybody else's. But I have the subject, 8.96 acres, is the last of what was the Abney family compound. My brother and I are acquiring the property from my mother, Marie Abney Havard. We want to divide the property into 2 parcels for our family homes. The current A1 zoning requires 5 acres for each residence. We are just barely short of being able to comply. Our proposal for A1A would allow us each to have 1 home on 4.48 acres. All the nearby subdivisions have higher densities than 4.4 acre sites. The lots along the northern boundary are 100-foot sites in Oakley Place, Phase 1 PUD. Abney Farm Estates was developed as A3, 2 units per acre. All property along the south side of Red Rooster Road is A2, 1 unit per acre. With only 2 homes on 8.96 acres, our density would be 1 unit for 4.48 acres. We are requesting that you approve A1A zoning, which would allow us to build just 2 homes on 8.96 acres, or remain A1 with a waiver. And that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Hall.
Okay.
Anyone in the audience wish to speak against this? Mr. Shane?
Good evening. Jeff Shane of Jones Fussell Firm in Covington, and I represent Chris Jean and also his mother-in-law, Jan Smith Stump, who, as you may remember, own property in this area. We are not opposed to what the gentleman just asked for. We understand that they would like to do what I guess we'll call a family compound with 2 homes. And so I want to make it abundantly clear that Mr. Jean and Ms. Smith are not, Ms. Stump, excuse me, are not opposed to that. But I would tell you that when the case was brought to my attention, of course, it was advertised, I believe, as A2. And I'm not sure that we feel totally comfortable with A1A unless there would be some re-subdivision of the property into 2 parcels. At A1A, it might be possible that there could be more than, there is 1 home on the property already, correct me if I'm wrong, and depending on how much land might be coupled around that parcel, we have concern that certainly if it was zoned A2, we all know that perhaps you could have 1 unit per acre and you'd have to go, but I realize these good folks don't want to do that. We would believe, though, that for it to be legally subdivided for a second house anyway, it's going to need to go through a re-subdivision. And so we would think that an appropriate qualifier or offer from the petitioner would be that it would be re-subdivided into 2 parcels, no more, and that again, they would have to, at least one of them be 3 acres in size. The other could be the balance or any combination thereof at A1A, and we would be in full support of that proposition.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Shane. I was provided with a drawing, and I really don't know, but it was a survey of Edward J. Murphy. And one of the parcels is 3.9 acres and the other would be 5.06. So the one that was 5.06 on the drawing that I've got, there it's showing the zoning remain as A1. On the 3.9, it's saying A1A. Staff, do you have any comments on? You'll be fine with that, Mr. Shane? Okay, now, Mr. Hall, you understand that you need to go through a re-subdivision process?
Yes.
Okay. All right.
I think we ought to have him come up to the microphone
Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
ask
Yeah,
for a
if
change.
the
from what
petitioner
he's
could
asking
come
for.
and state exactly
Yeah.
how many acres he
Right.
wants
Yes,
to have
that's what we
rezoned
need.
to A1A.
Okay. Do you have a copy?
Of this, of the survey?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's got the acreage on each one?
Yes,
and
sir.
everything,
Now, that was
5
just
acres,
kind of
A1?
like a rough sketch that my surveyor brought, and he actually brought to Ron Keller's office.
Okay,
And then that's when I met with just Mr. Jean and told us to do this application.
okay.
And that's what got things changed to A2 and got things messed up.
Okay. So,
Mr. Doherty, may I speak to the petitioner?
yes,
If you can call our office tomorrow, so we can clarify, you will have to provide a legal description of the exact area that you want to have rezoned
Okay.
to A1A.
We did do that. It was a notarized thing, and we actually got
Yes.
we submitted this already, so we need to do it all over again?
No, you will just have to submit a legal description of the portion of that 8.96 acre that you want to have rezoned to A1A.
Okay. Do I have that? I think I had that. I mean, I gave them the title or whatever it was,
Do you want to rezone the entire parcel to A1A? Or just a portion?
do what?
Well,
Okay,
leave that, the 5 acres, that would stay A1.
Yeah.
And then we just, A1A.
Not A2,
Yes,
A1,
okay, that's fine. I got that, yeah. I understand.
okay.
Thank you.
So what you need to do for tonight is, you need to recommend, that the A2 be done away with, and you're changing that to an A1A,
Yes, sir.
okay? A portion, this is a portion of the, 8.9, what was it, 8.9 acres?
8.96.
8.96 acres. And so the portion that would be 3.9 acres is gonna go to A1A, and you're comfortable with that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the other 5.06 is going to remain A1,
Yes, sir.
okay?
With one house.
Pardon?
With one resident on each one.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that'll come through re-subdivision.
No,
so.
right.
All right. Anyone else have it, Mr.?
Motion to approve.
Motion by Mr. Matthews to approve, seconded by Mr. Davis.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Motion carries. Thank you. Oh, excuse me, yes, it would be good if we have a vote.
Yours didn't come through, Ron. Oh, now it did.
All right, motion carries. Thank you. All right, page 2, item 4, zoning case 13-09-069. Existing zoning is A2, proposed zoning A2 suburban district and manufactured housing overlay at 6.33 acres. This comes to us by council motion of 8/1/2013, parcel located on the east side of Martin Luther King Road, east of Lake Road, Ward 7, District 7. Staff?
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses, including manufactured homes. Staff does not object to the request and would like to recommend approval.
All right, anyone in the audience wish to speak on this? Yes, sir, please state your name and
Hello,
address.
I'm Joseph Juhas. I'm a property owner, and my wife and I, we'd like to put a mobile home there. We're planning on building a house in the next couple of years. My wife's finishing college. She's got about 2.5 years left, and I recently accepted a job teaching here in St. Tammany. So we'd like to have a place that we can live while we get that together and then get to build our house. It's a large piece of property. It's over 6 acres. The mobile home would be inside of it, far into it, where you wouldn't even be able to see it from the road. I have some pictures from the road of the property, the entrance, if y'all would like to see them. It wouldn't even be visible from the street. And then if you had any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay.
So.
Thank you, Mr. Juhas, is that
Juhas.
the one? Okay, thank you.
Okay,
Let's
thank
see if
you.
anyone else has anything to say as far as the folks in the audience.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
My name is Marie Wright, and I live at 28030 Martin Luther King Drive. Myself and some of my neighbors who are here tonight, we're against a mobile home being placed in our area. We have, our area is not zoned for mobile homes, and we don't want any change to that. Right now, there are 2 mobile homes in the area, but they were there because of Katrina. The people lost their homes, and it was placed there. That was before any change that you made to any uniform codes that we have for zoning. We also have other people in the area that asked for mobile homes to be placed in the area, and they were denied. We have one lady here with us tonight, Miss Yvonne Montana. She was denied a mobile home to be placed in that area. That area floods, severely floods. Now, the place that he wants to put the mobile home, we don't have flooding there, but it's right down the street from us. We're kind of like on the top. The flooding is like right down from us. So we own homes there. We don't want a mobile home in that area.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak on this? Mr. Juha, you have a 5-minute opportunity for rebuttal.
Thank you. Yeah, I understand your concerns, and my wife and I, we do want to build a house there, and we will. That is definitely our plan, and I took a job as soon as I could in St. Tammany because it is very difficult to get into the school board, the St. Tammany school system. So it kind of happened sooner than we were planning, and my wife is finishing college. I would ask this sincerely, please don't try to deny us putting a mobile home out of spite because someone else was denied. We take a lot of pride in the property. We love it. We want it to be a beautiful place, and we want to put a house there. And like I said, I have pictures. You want to be able to see it from the road. And actually, with the flooding, I have the map from the St. Tammany website through LSU, and you can see that where the location is of the property, it's not in the flood zone area. I can pass that around, and I also have some pictures as well.
Okay.
So,
thank you, Mr. Juha. Ms. Wright, you have a rebuttal?
I just want to make it clear, it's nothing to do with spite or anything else. We as neighbors, we just don't want a mobile home in our area. It's not that we're being spiteful against him because he want to put one there, and especially one that's temporary. So he can build a home if he wants to put a home there. We have our home there. Let him build one too, just like we have. We just don't want it there. It's not developed for a mobile home. It's not a mobile home overlay. Most of the mobile homes are located on Pontchartrain Drive in Lacombe, and that's where most of the people put their mobile homes.
Okay, thank you. No, we've had rebuttal, both sides now, so I'm going to close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Davis.
Yes, I know this area very well. I live right off of Lake Road, and when you travel down Martin Luther King Road, and your first right when you turn, there's a home right there on the opposite side of the road where your property is at. Further down that road, there are raised mobile homes on that street. Martin Luther King, yes, ma'am. I can guarantee. Okay. Anyway, make a long story short, I don't have a real problem with having mobile home overlay in this area on the 6.33 acres on the A2, and you said you are going to build a house on this. It is a pretty piece of property. One question I do have after looking at the property, the road that goes all the way back on Martin Luther King Street, did you create that road?
that goes through?
The gravel road that continues off?
Please come to the mic.
Yes, the cul-de-sac?
Yes.
Please come.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Yes,
just
the
to the left of
cul-de-sac
your
to get
property.
into it, yes.
Just
And
to-
that's actually the picture that you're seeing.
Right.
That's the cul-de-sac to look into the property, and you can see that, you know, it's very dense.
So you'll have to,
dense
you'll
woods.
have to actually bring that manufactured home back down that road?
Yes.
And that's where you'll actually be putting it behind all this treat area?
Yes, and I have a map of where the plan is for the mobile home to go. I have that as well. I also have pictures of the mobile home. It's not just some little cheap home. I mean, it's a home that I would live in, so I would take pride. I mean, it's a nice home, so I have pictures of that as well. And I do have some other pictures of the street and the whole property, looking down the street at the property. It's all very dense. And at the end of the property, I have a picture of a mobile home that is across the street on Martin Luther King.
Right.
So-
Okay. With that being said, I'll make a motion to approve.
We have a motion to approve and a second by Mr. Matthews.
Oh, you got a motion and stuff?
Do we have a motion and a second? You-
Can we just rezone the 1 acre? I can understand their feeling over, that's a lot of land, and if something happened and he had to sell it, and, you know, y'all are in a position. So would you feel more comfortable like just 1 acre? And are you agreed to that? Just 1 acre?
Yes, I wouldn't have a problem with that. Would it delay everything further? That would be my only concern.
It would just be changing your request at the podium and speaking,
Yeah.
that you could,
Sure.
yeah. And you would get, the acre that you're, just that, you're taking out that 1 acre, so survey showing just that 1 acre.
Certainly, yes.
And that would be a little more protection.
Yeah, and even
For the residents.
If it could just be for 4 years, you know, and then I don't know if we can do it that
conditional
long.
uses, but we don't have those anymore.
Yeah, because the only one that I'm sorry.
We used to have something that was called a conditional use, and then you would have to, you know, but we don't have those anymore.
The only one that I knew of was we could put a mobile home, but we would have to complete building the house within a year. And my wife, like I said, she's finishing college, and we don't want to be under the restrictions of having to complete a house and then not being able to afford it. And
Well, on the zoning, when we rezone, we can't put any conditions on rezoning. You're just, so you're
Yes, ma'am.
stating that you will amend your petition to 1 acre,
Sure, yes.
and you will get to the staff what acre that is.
I'll amend my motion to
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Davis has amended his motion to include just a 1 acre of the 6.33. Mr. Matthews has agreed with his second. Any further discussion? Your nameplate's kind of in the way. Thank you, Mr. Drum.
I just have one question.
Okay.
What's going to happen to the
Wait,
mobile
wait
home?
just a moment. We're not hearing you for some reason. Mike, what's the problem?
He's new to the commission. I don't think he gets to speak yet.
No. There you go.
Okay, all right.
Tasting 1, 2, 3, okay. I just have a question. What's going to happen to the mobile home after the house is built?
Yes, sir. The mobile home, after the house is built, we're actually planning on selling it to pay our student loans that my wife is in college for, so.
Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Zoning, item 5, zoning case 13-09-071. The existing zoning is A1. The proposed zoning is A2 Suburban District. It's 41 acres. Petitioner is Al Kiesler, Quality Engineering and Surveying LLC. The owner is Grundy M. and Susan Lawrence. Parcel located on the south side of Joyner Weimer Road, west of Louisiana 1077, Ward 1, District 3. Staff?
The 2025 Future Land Use Plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses. The site abuts A1 suburban zoning on the east side and A3 suburban zoning on the west side. Staff is in favor of the requested zoning change to A2, considering that it would create a transition between the abutting A1 and A3 zone properties. Staff does not object to the request and recommends approval.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. I'm Al Kessler. I'm actually with Southern Geomatic Services now. Former company was Quality Engineering. I'd like to explain to you what the Lawrences would like to do. Unfortunately, they're not able to be here tonight as Mr. Lawrence works offshore. So I'm here to represent them.
You mean they wouldn't fly him in?
Pardon me?
They wouldn't fly him
They
in?
would not fly him in. And he tried to pull this week off, and it didn't work out, unfortunately. Basically, in 1979, Mr. Lawrence, the petitioner's father, owned this property. Sometime in the 80s, he sells off 2 acres to his son, the northwestern 2 acres, and then passes away roughly around 2006. At the time that he did that, he left 41 acres to Marker Lawrence and left 1.5 acres, or 1.4 acres, sorry, to Sarah Lawrence. Sarah is the sister to Marker Lawrence, who is making the petition. After 2006, the sister decides she doesn't want a piece of property in St. Tammany Parish. She wants something over in Mississippi, and they land swap, giving Mr. Lawrence back his piece of property. The problem is he could only have one homestead, which he was living on the northwestern 2 acres. This petition basically is basically taking the 2 pieces of property with the total of the 41 acres and trying to rezone it into what they actually deeded off. They deeded off 2 pieces of property, a 2-acre piece and a 1.4 acre piece. Neither one hold up to the A1 zoning. So the request is for an A2 zoning to allow 1 acre parcels or larger. On August 26th, I met with the Goodby Civic Association in regards to this property. From their recommendation, they were looking at for us to create A1A zoning, which allows 3 acres to 1 to 3 acres. The problem with that is the 1.5 acres and the 2 acres does not fit in that. The rest of the property would, but they're not really wanting us to create that because what happens is the road frontage that's needed for anything else they would like to divvy off to other family members would not allow them to divvy off 2 more pieces of property if they so desired. Their intention is not to divvy out 41 1-acre lots. Their intention is to have 2 more pieces of property for their family members along the road frontage, which is roughly left about 400 feet. There was 800 total. Take out the 2 acres at the northwest and the 1.5 acre to the northeast, that leaves 400 acres, or 400 feet, roughly. So that's why we went with the A2 zoning to create the rest of the 41 acres. Hopefully that made all sense.
Okay. All right. And your name was what?
Al Kessler.
Al Kessler, okay. All right. Do you have anything else? Let me see if we can move this on.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Here comes Mr. Martin. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, everybody. John Martin, Goodby Civic Association. Basically, the one gentleman now owns the whole property. He bought it from the sister, and he wants to sell off the 1.4. So he's going to own everything else except that 1.4 piece of property. He wants to sell that off. And this seems to be exactly the reverse of the third case y'all had. It would seem like that if we made the 1 piece of property that he wants to sell off, the 1.4 acres, if we made it an A1A and left everything else the same, that would solve the problem. He could sell off the 1.4 because it doesn't have to be 3 acres. It can be up to 3 acres, is my understanding. And I think that would just resolve everything. The question of turning 41 acres into A2, which anything could happen in the future, and you could end up with 40 homes, which I know y'all go down Joyner Weiner. That's a lot of traffic on that road, and it enters 1077 at a 90-degree. Tuscany West is right across the street. But Tuscany West has a nice egress and ingress, and it's the first thing on 1077. It wouldn't be affecting all the people that live on the road with perhaps in the future 35 homes or something back there going up and down that road. So it seems like an overkill to make 41 acres A2 just to sell off that 1.4 piece of property. So, thank you. We do have other people that live on Joyner Winder too.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Susanna Kerr. We actually live on Bunny Lane, which is off of Joyner Weimer. Our concern, like Mr. Martin said, was the fact that if something happens down the road and they sell it off and a developer comes in and puts a bunch of houses back there, Joyner Weimer is a very narrow road with no room for error, because you go right into a ditch. Plus, like Mr. Martin said, the turn is horrible to try and turn onto 1077, or if you're coming north to south and you try to turn onto Joyner Weimer, you basically almost have to come to a dead stop. So if we had an additional 200 or 300 cars going up and down Joyner Weimer, it would just be a nightmare. So that's what we would like to state.
Okay, thank you, ma'am. We don't have a speaker card from you. If you'll get one over here on the railing and complete it and turn it into staff, I would appreciate it. Okay, anyone else wish to speak against this?
Good evening. My name is Richard Kerr. I live at 72-210 Bunny Lane. That was my wife, Susanna. What she didn't mention is abutting the back of this 41 acres, they have another person that owns like 50, 60 acres. If you give them the A2 designation, it's not going to stop him from taking that and making that an A2 designation or coming to you for an A2 designation. So basically what happens is it's going to open up a can of worms for Joyner Weimer. And what we're looking at is just trying to keep it where it's not an abundance of vehicles going up and down the road unless you guys decide to come in and widen it or do something with it, you know. That's what the concern is. And then as it is, we're on 10 acres of property ourselves. So we're basically limited to what we can do with our property, and I think it should be the same way for everyone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Staff, let me ask you a question. Mr. Martin indicated that this could possibly be solved by going to an A1A designate or an A2 designation on the 1.4 acres, I believe it was. Okay, is that something that's feasible?
Yeah, he can only rezone the portion of the property that he wants to subdivide.
Okay. Mr. Kessler, is that something that?
That's not the ultimate intention of this property. There's two intentions of the property. He's inaccurate in what he has said there. There's a 1.4 acre piece of property in which they are splitting off, and then there's also the 2 acre property to the northwest. The reason we did the entire property is instead of having two different zonings on the same piece of property, that's what he's trying to do, is all of it. And then at the same time, if he decides his family members want an acre split off the frontage of Joyner Weimer Road, he has that ability without coming back to this zoning commission.
Well, maybe, Mr. Chairman, you know, only a portion of the frontage of the front of that property could be rezoned to A2 and the remaining portion to the rear.
The remaining portion what?
The remaining portion would stay A1. Because if they're planning on having frontage on Joyner Weimer Road, the minimum lot width is 150 feet, so there's only so many parcels he's going to be able to create. So maybe a portion of the 41 acres could be rezoned to A2 in the front, and then the remaining portion would stay A1.
But they have a portion that's on an opposite corner, sounds like.
Basically, you have opposite corners right now, and then you got a piece in the middle. It's the piece in the middle that ultimately they don't want to have to come back for if they want to split off for the family purposes.
So we.
Okay.
But in.
Let me
but I don't want to limit them to just the frontage. If they want to split off more than that, are they going to have to do a rezoning for that entire portion?
Okay, let me, I think we understand now what you're asking for. We understand what Mr. Martin and the Goodby Civic Association is saying. You have something else?
Yes, sir, I have 2 more rebuttals. I believe the last gentleman, I don't remember his name, that appeared here said that the zoning of the piece of property at the dead end of this road is A2 currently. I believe that's inaccurate. It's A3, which allows one for half an acre, 1 unit per half an acre. And then as well as, one other thing, this property is almost not developable. And I can tell you that from a surveying standpoint, that to the south of this, the southern end of this property is about elevation 24. The new zoning, the new maps that are probably coming out next year sometime, and the maps that are existing right now, say you have to be around 26, 27. So from that perspective, it's extremely low. They've got to bring it up probably 3 to 4 feet to make it buildable as well. So,
Okay, thank you.
okay.
All right. You dropped something, Doc.
Yeah, I'll pick it up, thank you. Yeah, that was sort of my question. If you look at the property and you know the property, it's terrible property. And cattle are on it, or I hope cattle are on it. Cattle are on it now, huh? Yeah, cattle are on it now. And to make a ditch A2 just, doesn't seem to make sense. If they want to do something with that front piece of property, and join a whiner like Helen suggested, that makes plenty of sense. But to do an A2, you can't bring mud into it. It just honestly doesn't quite make sense. But anyway, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, I'm going to close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. And Ms. Casbon, you've got your light on?
Yes, I agree. This has the Beatico Creek, and we've looked at this area for drainage, that it isn't quite developable. But I think to satisfy, or to change it to the A2, I think we just need to look at the front of it. And like you said, if in other words, for anybody to have a large enough building envelope, it would have to me, remain the A1 because of how low it is and everything. So if we can figure out a way to compromise and help them with the front and what they want to do, and leave the remainder of the A1, I would be conducive to that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Casbon. Mr. Matthews.
Well, I basically agree with Martha that what we really need to look at is the 1.4 and the 2 acre pieces up in the front. Those are the ones that they really want to make A2. I don't think we are in a position to do that tonight, because we don't know how much of that really is A2. The survey doesn't show how far those little pieces come back, and if these are accurate. I also would be in favor of taking the first portion of that, where it looks like a little fence goes across here, and making all of that A2 and leaving the remainder A1. But again, I don't think we're really in a position tonight to make that suggestion, because we don't know how big this piece of property is. I would think we probably would be better off postponing this till next month to allow them to come back with a definite area in which to designate A2, and then we could vote on that. And I'd make a motion to postpone to do that.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to postpone.
Mr. Chairman,
until,
why don't we see if he's agreeable to that too?
If we can avoid the postponement, can we go back 800 feet, which would be the fourth bend in the creek, and draw a line perpendicular to the western property line?
The fourth bend?
It's the one that says 199.07. The only reason I'm doing that is I want that piece of property that fronts the road up there to allow to get to the creek on that side.
That's pretty far back. Why wouldn't,
Well,
you
the
be
other-
amenable to that fence line? And I guess that's what that is, the lines with the X's, isn't that a fence line?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Why wouldn't we just
That's
continue
700,
that?
that's 700 feet. I can give up 700 feet.
Say again?
It'll be roughly 700 feet instead of 800, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, can we just say 700 feet? Does anybody have any?
I don't have a problem with
I would like to know about how many acres is that? I don't have, how much frontage you got, and if we go back 700
Well,
feet,
560,000 square feet would be
10 acres.
about 10 acres total.
Okay, we had a motion and a second to postpone, didn't we?
I withdraw my motion to postpone.
Withdraw in a second.
Okay, the motion to postpone, has been withdrawn.
I'd make another motion if
10 acres.
it's appropriate this time.
Okay, Ms. Casbon, you still have your line on?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Matthews?
I would make a motion with the petitioner's acquiescence that the front 700 feet off of Jarnawarma Road be designated A2. The remainder of the property continue as A1.
A second.
And that's approximately the 10 acres you're saying? And it includes, it's one house or two houses on it? Or it's just already, there's two houses?
There's currently 2 houses on it.
That's what, okay, on either side, okay.
That's 13 acres.
Yeah.
And the petitioner is agreeable with that.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Okay, all right, we have a motion and a
Yeah,
second
pretty much when you come.
on this
he's
case
in here, so
to
he's approximately.
change a portion back, coming back 700 feet from Joyner Weimer Road to A2, and the balance remains A1. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. Item 6, zoning case 13-09-072. The existing zoning is A1 Suburban District. The proposed zoning is A1 Suburban District and a manufactured housing overlay. It's 4.79 acres. The petitioner is Sarah Helen Williams. The owner is Sarah Helen Williams. Parcel located on the east side of Louisiana Highway 450 north of Ed Williams Road, south of Washington Parish line, Ward 2, District 3. Staff?
Staff does not object to the request and would like to recommend approval.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this? Yes, ma'am. Please state your name and,
Sarah Williams.
okay. You have turned in a card? Speaker card?
She's the petitioner.
Okay, all right. All right, any comments?
No.
Okay. Anyone in the audience wish to speak against? I'll close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Willie.
Mr. Chairman, Ms. Williams, correct, what she petitioned for is compatible to this area. I'll move for approval.
We have a motion to approve, seconded by Mr. Davis. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
All right, item 7, zoning case 13-09-073. Existing zoning A2 Suburban District, proposed zoning A2 Suburban District and manufactured housing overlay. It's 8,100 square feet. The petitioner is Nikki Catchot. Owners Thomas and Christine Catchot. Parcel located on the north side of Galantis Road, east of Revere Road, west of Louisiana Highway 1077, Ward 1, District 1. Staff.
The 2025 future land use plan calls for the area to be developed with residential uses, including manufactured homes. The area is developed with a mix of stick-built homes and manufactured homes. Staff does not object to the request and recommends approval.
Thank you. Anyone in the audience wish to speak on this? I'll close the floor to the public, bring it back to the commission. Mr. Lawrence.
Helen, I took a drive by there today, is the yellow sign was down, so I couldn't find the property. Is the property, there's a wooded area, it's all wooded?
I'm gonna bring you an aerial, so you.
If you've got one, that would be helpful. I'm just trying to picture in my mind where this is. Okay, this is Gladys. All right, it's wooded, and there's a canal or a ditch that runs along here somewhere. Okay, well, I found this road and this road without any problem. You know, you can see all these houses and you can see how congested it is, but when. Okay, excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't know there was anybody here.
Yes, sir. My name's Thomas Ketchot. My wife and myself, we own this property.
All right, if you come down Gladys Road, past where you turn to the left to go to the school,
Yes, sir. Pass that up.
pass that up.
There's a canal.
There's woods all on the right, and there's a canal that goes north.
Yes, sir. That canal, from that canal to, there's a mobile home, a house, a lot, then the next house. Our property goes from the canal to that
Okay,
other house.
okay. Now I know where it is. That's all I needed to.
The sign, kids run up and down the road, it's probably there laying on the ground or something. I'll check and see.
Thank you,
Yes,
sir.
ma'am.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion to approve, seconded by Mr. Lauren. Any further discussion? Please vote. Motion carries. Thank you. I don't see any old business on the agenda. No new business.
I've got one thing I'd like to bring up if we have just a moment.
All right.
Staff, on the first case, there was a reference back to the old M1 designation.
Yes, sir.
I think it would be real beneficial for at least me to find out what the old M1 designation meant.
Okay.
If it's important to state it, I looked online and I couldn't find the old zoning classifications. If you all would just maybe, when that's important, just include whatever you can for what M1 or C2 or whatever it was before is and what it allowed, so we would know to contrast it, if
Sure.
that's important.
No problem.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Do I hear a motion to adjourn? A motion and a second to adjourn. Thank you.
Who adjourned?
Did you have something to say?
So I was very mistaken. Helen had told me I needed to be at this meeting for a zoning change for Maroney and Caroline Street. I had participated in the meeting before, and it was approved, but I thought I had to come back to another meeting, and I would like to make another statement about that, if I
Yes,
could.
it's if I'm not mistaken, it's Thursday.
I wrote down the date, and I must have written it down incorrectly.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
you're up for approval at the council meeting.
Okay, well, since I'm here, can I make a statement about that?
We're adjourned. I mean, you know.
Okay.
We have already voted on that.
Yeah.
But, well, I would like to make a statement about that, if possible.
It's well, it won't be recorded.
That's all right. It's only to benefit council,
Well, council.
or, excuse me, planning and zoning.
I mean, you can make a statement, but I mean, it's not going to be part of the public record.
That's okay. It's only for your ears. It's a suggestion.
Okay.
The property that I rezoned was residential, then rezoned commercial because it's within the one block on either side of Highway 59. And the process to go back through that is a lengthy process, an expensive process. My concern is, I've seen this in the past, if I would happen to have a house on that property and wanted to sell it, most lenders, I don't know of any lenders that will loan residential a residential loan on a commercial piece of